Alright, so as you can see, the elusive 3 billboards did not make its way here yet. So, I was settled with these. Well, I guess it could have been worse, but we'll get there. Let's go ahead and start with Roma J. Israel Esquire, the movie that I was very excited about. Pretty much the only reason for that, it didn't matter that Dan Gilroy, the writer-director of Nightcrawler, had done it, or the fact of what the story was, or what the character was, or anything like that. Just that I was still on a high for how much I loved Fences, and I couldn't wait to see what Denzel was doing next. So I was just inherently excited for this because of that, but going in, I still wasn't quite sure what it was actually about for a very long time, especially with the title change from Inner City. Made it sound like it could have been anything. Almost made it sound like it could have been like another American Gangster type thing. But, yeah, so he is a lawyer who is apparently... I don't think the movie ever actually says this, but I keep hearing Asperger's is what he has. And it's one of those cases where it does kind of have this opening that grabs your attention, even though it's going to come back around later, and we're going to have to play the scene out all over again. But pulls us in just by watching his computer screen as he types up words and talks to us through that. So he's already made us kind of invested in the character before we even see his face. That's a really good start. And then it begins, and he sets up very quickly he's going to be one of those characters that we do really like, regardless of what his problems might be, and the decisions he might make later. How he may find himself in many holes, most of which he's dug himself, so... but you still want to stick by him anyway, because you just kind of start to like him so much regardless of his problems, and I think that's what Denzel accomplishes. One of the best things he accomplishes in this performance. When he first goes after his partner is now comatose because of I can't remember if it was a heart attack or a stroke. I think it was a heart attack. But, and so it's up to Denzel to kind of just get continuances for all his cases so they can pick up where they left off later after everything has gone by. And so the woman there says something that we know is directed at his character in regards to her saying, just get continuances, just do that, don't do anything else. And then she reminds him one more time on her way out the door. So we kind of, just that in itself gives us the vibe, but then it pays off in the next scene when he's actually in the courtroom talking to the judge. And it looks like things are getting out of the way, but then he talks about continuances, and the judge says, would you like a continuance? And his response is, let's just dive right into it. And it's like, yep. Okay, so, and that immediately tells you, yeah, this is going to be a very interesting character to watch. And a character that certainly, whether it's conscious or not, is going to get himself into a lot of trouble that will probably be very entertaining to watch until it gets darker, inevitably. From the writer-director of Nightcrawler, you sort of just expect that. And then it's one of those cases where just little things like that throughout. Like, there's another case when he says something like Carmen Ejogo wants to get him in front of a crowd to say something. And we think, well, she's thinking, well, okay, that's fine. But he actually says, well, I don't normally do public speaking. I'm usually encouraged to avoid it. And then that's when we realize there's probably a reason for that as well. So there's always those hints right before the scene happens, but that only adds more power to the scene when they can actually give it a payoff. It may not always land, but we'll get to that. It is one of those cases where another thing that's really important to Denzel's performance here is how he's able to deliver all of this dialogue, especially a lot of it being all of the law jargon and all that. And it's very much that flow is going to be important here. This is one of those cases where I feel like if the category wasn't so packed, this could have potentially have been an original screenplay contender. You think about the fact that the last movie that Denzel was in, where his performance got a lot of notices, but it was still the movie didn't so much live up to that performance, yet somehow still got into original screenplay. That's obviously Flight. And then obviously Dan Gilroy himself got in for Nightcrawler, but obviously the category is too packed this year, but it doesn't seem impossible that it could have in possibly a weaker year. And the way he just has so much passion, and you can tell where he's coming from and how he's managed to get to this point despite his problems because of just how much. There's even a moment with Colin Farrell later in the movie when we realize even when he's on the cusp of being fired, he can get his way out of it just because of how driven he actually is. Other things came into play, but mainly that's something that really draws attention to the character, and it's one of those cases where there are a couple of scenes where he makes phone calls, and we kind of watch him make poor decisions from his passion. Like, his passion doesn't always pay off in a good way. And that's when you realize this movie could have been Locke, and we would have been okay with it. If this movie was Denzel sitting in a room by himself making calls as this character for the whole 2 hours, it may have even been better than it actually is, as it stands now. Because it is one of those cases where every now and then, there's one specific example that makes me think this, obviously not the whole movie necessarily, but occasionally throughout the movie it felt like it almost could have been a play sometimes. One aspect that brings that out is the way his partner is treated throughout the movie, where you'll notice in plays often there are characters who are like really important and often discussed, but we never actually see them. And his partner is basically one of those characters. We do see him in the hospital later, but obviously he's comatose and his face is obscured for some reason. I'm not sure what that choice was, unless it was to kind of do that vibe, maybe. To kind of show that how much of an impact a character that we never see can have, maybe. So I did like that, and obviously another way his character is really intriguing is just his appearance in general. He looks like he's out of the 70s with his suits and his hair. He has a cell phone. He still has a flip phone, but occasionally he will use payphones. And then he has an iPod that's very important to him, but he has like the headphones that look like they're from like the 80s or something. So it's really interesting to see where it's almost like he's a character that doesn't quite know what time period he's in, despite the fact that he's clearly aware of how his iPod works, among other things like that. And another thing is kind of just watching him play up the whole Asperger's thing, where it's obviously I don't know enough about this to say what's 100% accurate and what isn't, but I was having a discussion with my brother and his wife the other day about the movie before I had seen it. And my brother was talking about how he's a lawyer with Asperger's, and then I was talking about how the poster was just him, the back of his head, facing that way. And my sister-in-law said that actually made a lot of sense, because this is kind of her area of expertise a bit. And she was saying how people with Asperger's tend to have problems with eye contact. So it was actually, that could potentially be a clever reference to that the poster is Roman facing away from us. And then I kind of looked for that throughout the movie to kind of see, and there are moments definitely where it's like, he's usually always kind of looking down or kind of looking to the side. Every now and then he'll look at them, but there's like a particular scene with Carmen Ejego where it's like, he'll be looking at her, but then when she looks back at him, there's like eye contact for a second, but then he quickly finds a way to look at something else. I wasn't looking that hard, but I will say, I don't know that it's totally consistent, but the stuff is in there, so if anybody knows more about that and is looking in that regard, then more power to you, I suppose. And it was worth noting that I was interested about what they had done, because when people were talking about if Denzel's Oscar buzz was anything to look at, particularly in regards to the quality of the movie, which obviously isn't always a player, but the idea that apparently the first time they screened it, the reactions weren't that great, but then I guess it's almost like they completely changed the movie or something just by Dan Gilroy and Denzel, I guess together, working on this, managed to cut 12 minutes out entirely, and then they rearranged the order of some scenes, and then that's what we see now, and I guess this is significantly much better put together than it was the first time it screened, with that extra 12 minutes in a different order. So it's interesting to look at it from that perspective in regards to... it kind of makes me wonder what exactly was in that, because the thing about cutting out 12 minutes and kind of changing things up for the pace is that this movie's pace is pretty off. Like, I do like the movie, but I mean, it feels long. It feels really long, and it's less than 2 hours. It's an hour 50 something. But it does feel long, so I'm very curious as to... Or maybe I'm not so curious what that stuff was they took out. Because just by looking at the product we have now, much as I do like it, I imagine those cuts were very much necessary, looking at what we have here, so... Yeah, and so there's also... I do like the way it plays up also, that I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that the title of the movie is his full name, and that's usually what you see with this. I'm wondering how many people are going to watch this and think it's like a true story, when apparently Rowan Israel is totally fictional. Like, I guess that was the main problem people had when they changed the title from Inner City to his name. Not just the fact that Roman J. Israel Esquire is a bit of a mouthful, but also the fact that that's typically something you do with biopics, and this is a character that's totally fictional, so what kind of audience do you think you're going to grab just with this fictional dude's name that nobody's going to know unless they watch the movie? So, yeah, but it does do a good enough job to where it does feel like it feels authentic enough that people will come out thinking that it actually happened and that he's actually was a real person. But there are moments when what Denzel brings to it, and that there are some good scenes in it. There are a lot of scenes that are diminished because of where they could have gone. Like, the moment when he's in the, when he's doing that speech, and then these girls confront him because they say he's, like, sexist and misogynistic and all that. And he does the, that's also being polite argument. And it looks like this is going to blow up into a whole debate or a whole feud or whatever. And yet maybe it's more in tone with his character and his problem, that this is the way the scene plays out. But it's like, just as it seems like this scene's going to have some real meat to it, it's just over. And he leaves. So it's like, I get if that's his character, but at the same time, it's like, it really felt like the scene was going to go somewhere. And in this particular case, you kind of got to question which one's more important in regards to the movie. That's a pretty tough call, but it's like, maybe I don't know what I would do about that, but yeah, like I would initially say maybe don't set up a scene that's not going to go somewhere as if it's going to be something really interesting, because then you're just blue-balling the audience. If it's that important to you, to make sure he sticks to the character, which obviously is very important because his character is the whole movie, so that's conflicting in a not very positive way. And then you have stuff like, there's sometimes when the deliveries are stuff like, Ejogo has this terrible line delivery that seems like it should be a really powerful moment. When he first meets her, dude, it's like Travis Bickle meeting Sybil Shepherd and Albert Brooks at the campaign office. And he comes in and he does his thing, and then once he leaves, the dude is standing by and he says, who was that freak? And Ejogo says, you stand on his shoulders. It's like, I think that was supposed to be a really powerful moment that shows just how much she knows just his place in this and how important he is and how important he's going to be for them. And she says it in like this really just, all it takes is one sentence, and it's just like so powerful, it gets the point across entirely. God, this delivery is so kind of nonchalant and vacant, and it just doesn't have any punch whatsoever. So there is some of that, but there are other things that are kind of intriguing. Some things kind of unintentionally, I think. I knew for a long time that Colin Farrell was going to be in it, but I had no idea what he did. I had no idea what he was going to look like. And so when I first saw him in the movie, he's very, very clean cut. Like his hair's short, completely clean shaven, looks freshly showered, he's in his nice suit, he's got an important job. And it's like, I noticed, I'd never really thought about it before, but I noticed it watching this now, and it was like, because he looked so clean cut, for a lot of the movie I was really suspicious of him. Like, he felt really ambiguous to me about whether or not he was for or against Roman. Because it's like, the more clean Colin Farrell looks, the more sinister he looks. It's like you could slap like a mustache on him or whatever, he looks like more of a good guy than he does when he looks like he does in this. So I don't think his character's supposed to be as ambiguous as I found him because of that. So, but at least that was there. And the main problem, it's the main asset of the movie and the main fault at the same time, is the fact that it's definitely, for sure, one of those movies that works much more for the individual scenes by themselves than it does as a whole. Like, adding up, it's kind of, you start to see the direction it's going to go, and there's not really too much that's engaging. But you can find yourself getting engaged just long enough for individual scenes, and then once those scenes are over, then it's up to another scene to bring you back in. And there are enough of those working together, along with Denzel's performance, that I think you could say it's a legitimately good movie. Like, there's some dialogue here and there that does really work. Farrell's line about how his dad told him he was drowning in the shallow end is like a really, if you'll forgive the phrasing, deep line. And then there's stuff like the scene with the homeless guy, or there's stuff that feels rather comedic, like when Denzel comes into a lot of money at one point, and the first thing he does is buy 3 donuts, and he's really psyched about it. So just little moments like that. There's even the moment, the U-Haul scene, when they really play up the paranoia angle, and they do that pretty well. But, yeah, that's the thing, though, is these scenes do work, and I think Denzel's performance works enough that it does eventually, you can leave the theater satisfied, more or less. But there are definitely some things here that are lacking, or feel like they should have been a lot more than they ended up being, and it just kind of, some of these moments that seem like they could have been great just get really watered down by them cutting it off too early, and maybe an actor doesn't make the right choice in how they say a line, or something, but yeah, still, those things those things do make up for some of the shortcomings to where it balances out just right, to where you can be just satisfied. Obviously, I can't see this being, I don't know, there's all kinds of different audiences, but I personally, looking at it, can't see it as a movie that people are going to go totally crazy for, like you see a 3-star rating at the bottom here, but it's like, that's not even a rating I'm all that passionate about. Despite the fact I've been really passionate about movies I've given that rating to. That's kind of why the star counts really don't matter, but I just do them anyway as a kind of some people really want shortcuts in regards to how people feel about movies, so yeah, but it is good. I will tell people that it's good when they ask me about it, so that's pretty much the extent of that. Let's go on to, I finally got around to Daddy's Home 2. Not necessarily that I was avoiding it, just that there were other movies out I wanted to see first, obviously. So, obviously, it's taking so, the first Daddy's Home came out Christmas of 2015, but I don't really remember it being a Christmas movie. So this one wanted to take advantage of that, despite the fact that it came out in November. Doesn't make any sense to me either. And it's weird how much it lines up with Bad Moms doing the same thing. It's like they're literally the gender opposite movies, and they happen to decide, hey, so soon after we get a sequel, let's make it a Christmas movie, because it's almost like they wanted to compete or something. And they came out so close together, too. Neither of which in December, but whatever. So, we basically pick up where we left off in regards to Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg becoming buddies now, becoming co-dads, as they call it. And they basically walk around as their own, they might as well be their own couple. Like, it gets it's very, very kind of... Obviously, it's played it for comedic effect, but I mean, they're, like, really damn close now. And that's okay, but obviously, much like the plot of A Bad Mom's Christmas, we got to have the parents of the parents come in and wreak havoc. So where A Bad Mom's Christmas gave us Susan Sarandon, Christine Baranski, and Cheryl Hines, we have Mel Gibson as the father of Mark Wahlberg and John Lithgow as the father of Will Ferrell. And the first thing you'll look at here, same thing, same compliment I paid to Bad Moms, Daddy's Home gets as well. Perfect casting. You cannot go wrong with the people that are in these roles. It all writes itself. It all adds up. You should have no problems now that you have this cast. And much like A Bad Mom's Christmas, it finds a way to keep falling short. While at the same time not falling into the terrible category necessarily. And yeah, pretty much the same thing with Bad Mom's Christmas as well. It's the thing where we've added new cast members. We've got a nice big recipe here. I know I say this as not a big Will Ferrell fan, but I mean, when you have all these people working together, playing off each other, something's got to happen. And you just kind of end up with the same thing as the last time, before you even brought the new cast members in. It's basically the same thing, just with slightly different shenanigans. Maybe possibly they're going to try to go a little bigger, but most of the time it doesn't really work. They even, obviously the big tease at the end of the first movie was that the bully's kid or whatever, or no, the father of the other daughter was John Cena. And so you see all the posters and stuff, and you see John Cena on them, and they really plugged John Cena's in this. They really, really fucking wasted John Cena. He's in 2 scenes, one of which is the end. So it's... and they just want to give us the same thing. And so, yeah, it's very interesting to see Mel Gibson diving into comedy so fast after his return, following his Oscar nomination for Hacksaw Ridge. I guess you could say when he was in Machete Kills and Expendables 3 kind of was the start of it, and now he's managed to get here. And yeah, he definitely does bring some comedy to it, a couple of relatively unexpected moments, and he's certainly game for the material. And then there's John Lithgow. And obviously, if you're a gigantic Third Rock from the Sun fan like I am, the thing about John Lithgow is he's known for playing these role series. Obviously, on The Crown, he's, being showered with awards right now. And, you look back at even the 4th season of Dexter, and you see John Lithgow in all these different ways, or in terms of endearment even. And you just see him in so many different ways. But he is just so good with comedy, and comedy just, speaks to him in such a way that it's regardless of all these dark characters he's played or these serious characters he's played, he's one of those people where if he walks on the screen in a comedy, much like he did in this at the top of the escalator, I'm already laughing just at the sight of him. He doesn't even have to do anything, and I'm already laughing just because he's here, and I know something funny will be coming, because he's just that in tune with the genre. And yeah, they do give him a big introductory thing. I'm pretty positive it was in all the trailers, so it's not a huge deal, but they do introduce him very much in an in-your-face way, which is good, because it means they're not technically wasting him. And then the problem, though, is that as it goes on, you realize that when your material is this bland, there's hardly a talent that can save it. And it's you've got the talent, it's just they kind of got to go through the motions of these setups and this script you probably half wrote. It's where it's maybe you had vague ideas of these setups, but you weren't quite sure where they were going to go. And it's... yeah, I mean, it's not without laughs, obviously. The biggest laugh in the movie is the fake Liam Neeson movie, obviously. But the thing about it is you have all these people that know comedy so well. You have somebody like Wahlberg, or Gibson even. Gibson did a lot of comedies back in the day, but you look at somebody like Wahlberg, and it's he doesn't do a shitload of comedies, but he is very funny in comedies most of the time. So you kind of wonder what exactly is the problem here. And you have, like, I saw people, like, Lithgow and everybody was, like, praising the director, who's also a co-writer, so it's like, so where are the problems? Where is this blandness coming from when you have this seemingly perfect storm? And the thing is it's like they completely tend to ignore the rules of comedy despite their professional status. Take, for instance, the shower scene. When Will Ferrell steps into the shower, fully clothed, and he's trying to figure out how it works. And it turns out it's voice activated. So he turns to Linda Cardellini and says, "How do you turn the shower on?" And him saying, "Shower on," turns the shower on, and then it does it again, and it gets more and more built up. And the thing here is that the comedy rule they seem to be breaking here is that as the water comes down on him, he just stands there and he takes it. And he milks it. Just standing underwater is a comedic situation that needs to be milked. So Will Ferrell's just gonna stand there and scream while water hits him when he could so easily step out of the goddamn shower. And you have scenes like that. And they seem to want to try to justify this when, because you don't, like, you know, the idea would be he steps out of the shower doing the logical thing, and then something else happens to him, would be the next logical step. But they want to do the just stand there and take it line, or just don't do anything so that the comedic situation can play out around you, which isn't funny. It rarely is, unless it's something that's spiraling out of... The one that always comes to mind is the scene in Meet the Parents, when it starts with Greg on the roof looking for his cigarettes, and somehow, through a series of events, ends with the altar exploding. Because that's just the series of bad luck that happened. And when you watch it play out from that step by step, and we see how it escalated to this point completely out of his control, it's not because Greg should have been doing something that he just wasn't so that the comedic situation can play out. He could not stop that shit from going down, and it just kept getting worse. That's why that scene's so funny. And then they try to justify that again later when something similar happens to Will Ferrell, when he's got the thing and the lights get caught in it, and he holds on to it while it controls of the lights and he flies around. And so I think it's Linda Cardellini that turns to somebody and just says, "Why doesn't he just let go of it?" And Mel Gibson says, "Because he's an idiot." And it's like, oh. So that's it. Okay, so your whole comedic setup is that he's an idiot. You're telling us this halfway through the sequel to another movie, where he was the main character as well. And now we learn, oh, okay, so the whole payoff to every joke is that he's a fucking idiot. Hysterical. Will Ferrell doing his Will Ferrell thing. Great. So that's what a lot of the movie is. Like, a lot of it. Like, through the whole thing, to where, like, I often, usually in situations like this, Meet the Parents is the example I use. I would say, this was like that scene in Meet the Parents. Like, oh, you could fix this scene by making it like Meet the Parents. Nobody is ever going to say, oh, this bad comedy over here would be better if they did it more like Daddy's Home 2 did this particular scene. That's not going to happen ever. This movie has no unique comedic qualities to it at all. Like, not even one scene. This was another thing with Bad Moms Christmas, where it's like, is your big payoff scene, like, is your big centerpiece scene the dodgeball scene? It's like, so fucking what? So it's like, what would that be in this one? Where we get comedic situations like, one of the daughters is given a gun, and they're gonna go hunting. Because Mel Gibson thinks if you're gonna pretty much be anybody, that you have to hunt. And instead of her, you know, the idea would be, okay, she gets joy out of hunting. The end, or whatever. And it's like, I'm not really sure, off the top of my head, where you could take this for it to actually be funny. But Daddy's Home 2's idea was to make her suddenly bloodthirsty. Just like, not just that she's a little too excited to shoot deer, she's a little too excited to kill anything. And that's where we take the joke. And somebody gets injured, but I mean, it's like, what, I don't know. And then there's the stuff like, there's cases like this, where it's like, you could say maybe you could say they go too far by making the child bloodthirsty with a rifle. But then you have later scenes where it's like they don't take it far enough, where you wish they'd taken it too far. Where one of the two of the girls get into the eggnog, and it's alcoholic eggnog. So the kids, there's a drunk 9-year-old in this movie. A 9-year-old kid in this movie is drunk. There are so many possibilities, you can't see them in the horizon. They have her slur a little bit and then pass out. And that's the extent of the joke of the drunk 9-year-old. You see where all the wasted opportunities are, and where it's like, I don't really feel like they're trying to do anything, honestly. I feel like they got their cast together, maybe they had some laughs when the cameras weren't rolling, and then when they were rolling the cameras, it was like half, oh, this is kind of funny, half, we're kind of at work, too. And then it's just a whole bunch of, it doesn't really look like anybody cared a whole lot about anything as they made this. But then, of course, we get into the conflict stage, where everybody's going to be fighting with each other. Obviously, throughout the movie, it's going to be comedic conflict, but now it's going to be serious conflict, because we're past the hour mark in a comedy. So, what happens here is a number of missteps. There are moments when, once Will Ferrell and John Lithgow start getting, because Ferrell and Lithgow are the happy-go-lucky ones, and it's like, this is how we deal with our problems, with smiles on our face and stuff like that. But then it gets to the point where when they realize this is the conflict of the movie, they get so hostile that it's like, they just start completely going out of their characters. And it's like, just for the sake of, there's conflict now. It's like their characters just start acting like angry. It's weird. And they just completely go against their characters. And it's like, would it not be maybe funnier if the situations kept getting worse and worse and worse and more serious, and they were still their happy-go-lucky selves trying to get through it? Like, isn't there something there? Why do you have to have the movie try to get all fucking serious and have them just totally go against their characters throughout the whole movie just to have the sad portion of the movie? And it's like where everybody just fucking sulks or runs out of rooms and slams doors. Did you forget you were making a fucking comedy? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know they eventually want to have a message and all that, but it eventually gets to the point where it's like, a lot of this, pretty much the entire last half hour of this movie consists of scenes of people making scenes in public, or revealing lies, and all of that tired bullshit, where they just go into all these predictable arguments and all that stuff. And it gets to wild there, too. It's like, it's supposed to be half comedic, half, oh, this is the sad part of the movie. Everybody in this movie is, like, so cruel to Lithgow, who's just going through the movie, you know, hugging and kissing people. And it's like, and everybody's a piece of shit to him. And I think, half the time it's supposed to be funny. And there's something a little funny there when they're throwing snowballs and somehow everyone lands. Every time somebody throws one, it lands on Lithgow and knocks him over. It's a little too much like the joke in, what was that SpongeBob episode called? The Snowball Effect, where every time somebody threw a snowball outside, it somehow ended up in Squidward's house and put his fire out. It's basically a rip-off of that joke. So everybody's always ripping off SpongeBob. Always. So, yeah, SpongeBob's even featured in this movie, by the way. There's like one quick second where the kids are watching him and Wahlberg turns the TV off. So it's like, maybe that wasn't on purpose. Maybe you're just actively stealing and want to see if you get caught. You fucking lazy assholes. But yeah, it's not a terrible movie. It's not. Like, the cast does make it watchable, but it's just really very run-of-the-mill. Everything, every fucking damn thing is this same predictable bullshit in this movie. And it's like, if you've seen the first movie, you've basically seen this one too. This one just happens to have Mel Gibson and John Lithgow in it. And to put the cherry on top too of the missed opportunities, that ending wasn't that disappointing. That really felt like we were building to something, and it's like, I mean, that is, to their credit, it's an unexpected. It's an unexpected direction, but I mean, it feels like such a missed opportunity too. You know, where it's like you say, oh well, okay, and it almost gets a laugh out of you because it's so unexpected, but then it wears off after 5 seconds, and you're like, oh well, wow, I thought that was going to be better. There was a lot of build up to that. Damn it. So, yeah. There's like, and you actually think this is almost a time where you wanted sequel bait. Because the thing is, it's like you built, like you had Cena in the first movie, and then Cena's here too. And then you think the big reveal is going to be, oh, if we do a third movie, this is what we're bringing. And then it's like, oh, we got all this now. But then you realize because of who it is, it's like, oh, this is not sequel bait. This is just a one-off joke. And then it's kind of like, I mean, I probably would have still been on its case if it was sequel bait, but at the same time, it's like, if it had been somebody that just really was like, oh, that is the perfect payoff to this joke. And it's like, that isn't. So, yeah. So, yes. So, that basically everything I said was negative, but it's not terrible, okay? If that makes any sense. So, our third movie is going to be Better Watch Out. A new horror Christmas movie to throw on the pile of horror Christmas movies. The last one we had that really hit well was Krampus, which I really liked. And that was 2 years. Maybe we've had more since then, but this is the one that seems to be breaking through and getting a lot of attention and a lot of acclaim. I don't know what the fuck people are smoking, but this movie does have acclaim, actually. So there's that. It's got like a 90-something on Rotten Tomatoes. I just don't know what to do with that, so I'm just going to talk about it from my perspective. So, okay, actually I'm going to say something here real quick before we start, and that is that apparently what this movie is in its entirety is apparently a surprise. Like, apparently we're not supposed to know this is what the movie's about, even though it's what, like, the whole movie's about. So we're dealing with that kind of territory, where I guess, like, the marketing and, like, the plot synopsis and the posters and all that, do not set you up for what the movie actually is, I guess. So if you haven't seen it, you probably don't want to hear this, unless you trust my rating down there and won't seek it out. So yeah, just putting that out there now, because I'm gonna go right into it. So it actually starts off, before we even get into all that, before we get into the meat of the story, really it was just one of those movies that rubbed me the wrong way as soon as it started. And it's not like I didn't give it a fair chance. I knew going in that people really liked it. So it was, and I'm always up for a horror movie that's going to break out, even if the ones that tend to break out I'm not usually big on, like It Follows and The Babadook, for instance. But it was like, let's see what happens, you know. Like if it's like Bob Clark's Black Christmas or something, it's like, bring that shit on. Yes, give me all of it. But it begins, and one of the very first things that happens is we have a girl who's building a snowman, and then some kid comes along and hits the snowman's head off with a baseball bat, and the little girl chases him and screaming, "You butt fucker!" And then we go on to the next scene, and this married couple are Patrick Warburton and Virginia Madsen. And Virginia Madsen's walking through the house, they're getting ready to go to a party or something, and there's Christmas music playing. And she's very bitter, and she's like, oh, will somebody turn that shit off? And then Patrick Warburton says something. I don't know if it was something, I can't remember if it was something feminine or what it was, but he just said something. And Virginia Madsen looked at him, and she's like, are you absolutely positively sure you've never sucked another man's cock? It's like, we're like 2 minutes into the movie right now. After the buttfucker girl, after turn that shitty Christmas music off, after asking Patrick Warburton if he sucks cock. So it's like, okay, I can already see what the fuck you're doing here. You want to be that movie that there's already plenty of movies like, where it's like, hey, we're a Christmas movie, this is, you know, a time of joy and cheer, but oh, we're going to turn that on its head, and we're going to put profanity in, and we're going to be really, you know, have vulgar dialogue and make characters unlikable because it's the total contrast. And then we're going to give you a gory horror movie on top of that. It's not really that gory, but they're going to give you a violent horror movie as well to set you up that this isn't your average Christmas movie or some bullshit like that. So it's like immediately after 2 minutes you can fucking see right through this thing. And it hasn't even gotten to the shit it's gonna do yet. This has nothing to do with the rest of the movie, except that there's more vulgar dialogue in it. We're R-rated, let's celebrate that. And yeah, thank you, Ryan Reynolds. So we go, and their child is Levi Miller, I think is his name, who you might remember played Peter Pan in Joe Wright's Pan. Did you forget about Joe Wright's Pan? You're so lucky. And there's a reunion here, speaking of horror movies, where he's got his babysitter and his best friend. His babysitter and his best friend are the brother and sister from The Visit. Not playing brother and sister this time at all. We continue on, and this is pretty much where the turn happens. When it's basically like, this is pretty much a companion piece to The Babysitter with, what's her name, Samara Weaving and Bella Thorne, that's on Netflix. It's a piece of shit. People liked it. I obviously haven't, like, reviewed hardly any Netflix movies except Mudbound, but I've been watching them, and I saw The Babysitter, and it's a lot like this. So, and the thing is people kind of latched on to The Babysitter and like, oh, it's fun, it's clever, it's got witty dialogue. And it's like, I'm glad you think that, but it's none of those things. It's really not. I think people kind of think, people seem to have this idea that Netflix has stuff on Netflix because it's worthwhile. But no, I kind of talked about this when I was talking about Mudbound. It's like 90%. Like, Netflix does have some great movies they put out, but they are few and far between. The Babysitter's not one of them, and this feels just like that, only with a Christmas setting and the roles reversed. Because the idea is that this kid wants to seduce the babysitter with the help of his friend. But when that plan fails, we realize that this kid is homicidal. This kid's insane. And he's basically going to keep her there until she falls for him or something. I don't really think he has too much of a plan. But then we kind of contrast with that later. I don't know. It's not very well thought out. So we go on, and the whole thing here is that they set it up like it's going to be this, oh, this is a horror movie like you've never seen before, or something like that, or this is going to be, you know, kind of meta, and it's going to turn cliches on its head, or stuff like that. The first thing they do to turn the cliches on their head is give us a whole lot of forced jump scares. Yay. And then, oh, it continues. The thing about this movie, this was a real problem, and I'm sure some people may even use this as a defense towards the movie. I don't know. I'm being very presumptuous. I'm sorry. But the thing here is, when I was watching this, I had to look it up after I saw it to make sure what was really going on here. I thought, about half an hour into the movie, because the thing about it was, the performances are terrible. The performances are absolutely fucking terrible. The girl gets better as the movie goes. And they, I thought both of them were fantastic in The Visit. They were so good in The Visit, and a lot of the reason I like that movie as much as I do. But I mean, this kid, much like in Pan, this kid really does not have what it takes, especially not for this part. And so it's like you got the forced jump scares, you've got really bad acting, and you've got this ridiculous situation. And a plot that doesn't seem to be very well put together, very well thought out. And so, legitimately, not like as a, oh, it's so bad. I mean, I legitimately, for the first half hour, thought this was parody. Like, intentional parody. So when it was over, I started looking it up. And I didn't see the word comedy anywhere. This movie is supposed to be played totally straight. It does obviously have comedic moments in it. Things that are intended to be comedic. But for the most part, it's supposed to be this really sort of... I started looking up the reviews, because I was like, oh, what the fuck? Why do people love this? I guess people they said, like, it's this disturbing movie, and it's like a movie of mind games. People were comparing it to Funny Games. And it's like, what the fuck? There is no possible way we saw the same movie. No way whatsoever. Because if you found the movie disturbing, and if you thought it was something like Funny Games, that would have to mean that you were taking this kid's performance seriously. And I see no possible way that that can happen. I know, once again, different opinions, all that. This is just me talking. But the thing here is, this kid, and I mean, not only is it an awful performance, but you just think about the fact that I'm guessing the main thing that's supposed to be disturbing here is that he's a kid. That he's a 12-year-old kid. He's trying to fuck his 17-year-old babysitter. He's like playing mind games with his best friend. He's obviously sociopathic in regards to how he's able to hide all these things. We hear a bunch of stories about how he killed his best friend's hamster or whatever. I think something fell over in the other room. And so, he heard me talking about his bad acting, now he's here to kill me. So, the thing about it is, that threw me off, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, so they want to play up the disturbing angles that he's just a kid and he's be able to pull all this off. But the thing is that we've had the evil kid movie so many times. Sometimes better, sometimes equal. I struggle to say worse, because I really don't like this movie. But we go all the way back to the 60s with The Bad Seed, or you go to the 90s with The Good Son, or you got stuff like the shittier ones, like, remember Mikey with Brian Bonsall, or Joshua that had Sam Rockwell in it. We've had the sociopathic kid many times. They even did this in a really interesting way with Birth. So this doesn't... I mean, it's even like... This actually feels like on the level of Mikey, this kid. If you didn't see Mikey, Mikey has a scene. Mikey is played up as a straight horror movie, and it's Brian Bonsall, the kid from Family Ties and Blank Check, and there is a moment when his teacher comes into the house. And this is what I was thinking about when I was watching Levi Miller and Better Watch Out. The movie, the character that people found very disturbing, with his mind games and all that. There's a scene in the movie Mikey when the kid's teacher comes over, and she's like, Mikey, what's going on here? And he says, you know, hi, teacher, whatever. And he's like, you know, there is one thing you never taught me. And she's like, what's that? And he's like, how to die. And he shoots her with a slingshot in the eye and kills her. That movie, to me, is a lot more comparable to Better Watch Out than something like Funny Games or whatever. I can't even say that with a straight face that people compare this movie to Funny Games. And you all know how I feel about Anarchy. I can't fucking do this with this movie. I really can't. And so he goes on, and he does the whole thing to where... okay, here's another thing. Another thing about this performance that I don't like, and I don't want to put it all on him, because he's a young actor, and, you know, I've only seen him in, like, a few things, so it's like... A lot of this is probably on the director. You'd have to guarantee that. So we want to cut him a break. So I don't want to seem too... As if he's ever going to see this. The thing is, though, is like, I was starting to think about, also, what people were talking about with Jared Leto's Joker. You remember the scenes in Suicide Squad that people didn't like, when pretty much any time Leto would laugh. Like when he's laying with the knife surrounding him and he's laughing, and everybody says, well, that doesn't strike me as a person that's legitimately insane. That just seems like he's laughing so that it looks like he's insane, when his timing does not line up with insanity whatsoever. It's like, look at me, I'm insane, or whatever. And that's what this performance feels like, because there are those times where he has those evil mannerisms, where he dances, and he'll stand a certain evil way, or he'll, like, tap his fingers in a sinister way, and it's, like, all out of tune. And it's like anything he does that would match up to doing something insane. It's like all these different mannerisms are the whole, this is what I have seen whatever. I really, really hate to use this as an example, and I don't recommend you check it out if you haven't. But there was that video, that real life. This is a fucking terrible example to use, and I so apologize for it. But I mean, it's just what's coming to me. That video of that dude in real life that like shot up that sorority house, where he took a video of himself in his car, and while he was talking, even though this was a real life insane person, he came off so fake. Like he was trying to do like movie sinister laughs. And it's like, and it just is just weird and unnatural, but not in the way it's intended. It just seems really fake, and like you saw something and you copied it, and it just makes you look so incredibly unthreatening. And now that we're talking about a fictional character in this movie, we can say, that doesn't work. That really, really doesn't work at all. And this is what the whole movie, like the whole movie, it depends on this performance, depends on us being very unnerved by this character. And no, it doesn't, not working at all. And there's even moments when like it attempts to be stylized, like the way the camera moves. Like they try to do like a kind of a James Wan move a couple of times, where like if somebody falls down, the camera follows them this way, or if they get back up really quick, the camera follows them that way. And it's like, I don't know what that's supposed to add, especially since it only happens like twice. It just looks really out of place and makes the movie look really poorly put together. Like I said, as if nobody had a clue what they were doing. They were just going as they went and hoping the movie landed in a good spot. So yeah, so I don't really, I mean, and I guess they do try to play it up a little bit when they try to put some realism in it, and he's not being, actually, I guess this is even more goes to that, how much of a contrast it is to his character trying to do the over-the-top evil thing, and we're actually supposed to buy it. And that is, it's almost like they try to add a real layer to it to make it creepier. Like the moment when, after they've had the babysitter tied up, he and his best friend just kind of walk around the house, talking like normal kids. Like they just have like sex-obsessed conversations or whatever. Lots of profanity. Like two teenage boys would do if they were home alone. They're not even teenagers yet, they're supposed to be fucking 12. And so, and I think that's supposed to kind of add a realism, like, oh no, they act like real kids, but they're also doing insane things. But it's like, yeah, they act like real kids, but then when they're doing the insane things, they look like fucking they just started watching 1930s movies, and are like, that's what the villains do? Alright, let's try that in 2017 when I'm supposed to play a hip kid. This is, oh my god, I don't know what this is. And then, of course, like I said, it seems like it wants to kind of maybe turn it, the way they're covering up what the movie is about makes it seem like they're trying to show us something we haven't seen before. That's pretty much the only reason to hide something in a movie, because you want to surprise us, right? But the thing is that they do this is what I was talking about with, like, it felt like parody, because it's like they were just doing the cliches. But then it's like, when the movie thinks it's turning its head on the cliches and doing something different, no, it's taking these cliches and throwing them away, but then just giving us new cliches. And they're like giving us cliches they weren't using before, but they're still cliches anyway, for the second half. And yeah, and it's really trying to do the meta thing. There's a death that comes about because he's trying to prove that the paint cans in Home Alone would have killed Harry and Marv doing that. So he must demonstrate it. And it's, but no, the whole thing is not working for me. So I'm really, and that's the thing too, is I want to look more into the reviews, because I really want to find out what it is that people see. Just what I saw skimming through briefly, because I don't like to get too many reviews in my head before I talk about them myself. I like to do that afterwards. But I'm afraid that I'm not gonna get, I mean, obviously it really just boils down to different opinions, the end. But I mean, I'm just really, really curious how how somebody can look at this movie and see something so worthwhile, and the fact that so many people did. I mean, I'm not, like, angry at them, and I don't think they're wrong or stupid. I'm just so intrigued. It's so interesting that so many people found a good movie in this. But, yeah. And we all set out to have good movies. See good movies, so I'm envious of you. I really am. So, yeah. What the fuck? Okay. Our last movie, real quick, is The Mountain Between Us. Finally got around to it. Obviously, Ashley's been saying some choice things about it for a while now in the Oscar videos. So I was like, oh, it can't be that bad. Once again, I underestimate him. So, we have, obviously, we all know the plot. Idris Elba, Kate Winslet, get into a plane, it crashes, they're stuck on the snowy mountains, they have to survive. Survival movie. There we go. And so, there is a tiny bit of a setup to this. A little bit. So, it's like the opening of a romantic comedy or something. Or it's like the opening of Four Christmases or something. And they're both trying to get flights. They're both very much in a hurry. Kate Winslet's got to get home to marry Dermot Mulroney. Idris Elba is a surgeon that's got to get to a surgery. A very important surgery of like a 10-year-old boy or something. It's like his life depends on it. So it's like, well, all the flights are delayed because of the weather. They're cancelled. So they both have to hitch a ride in one of those small planes, like fucking Ewan Bremner in The Rundown with the duct tape. And it's Beau Bridges and his dog. So it's like, okay, guys, just get in my shitty-ass plane and we'll go do this. And it's not the fact that it's a shitty-ass plane that almost kills them, it's the fact that Beau Bridges has a stroke mid-flight and they crash. But not before he's informed us of all the different hazards, where he says, I had to write this down, that it is 1,000,000 acres of pure-ass nature below them. 1,000,000 acres of pure-ass nature. So... I'm sorry, I kind of love that line just as much as I hate it. So there, and it's like nothing but snowy mountains and all that. And then of course they're going to crash, and you think, we've actually been pretty good in regards to plane crashes in movies lately, even if the movies aren't up to par. Like, they're like The Mummy. You can say what you will about The Mummy, it's a pretty sweet-ass plane crash scene. Or you look at, like, this movie seems to take a lot from The Grey. The Grey has a very intense plane crash scene. So it's like, every movie, no matter how good or bad, manages to at least master its plane crash scene. This movie can't do that. They're very clearly sitting on some half-airplane set with a green screen behind them of mountains getting closer and closer until we cut to black. Hardly any suspense. We're all just hoping the dog lives. That's all we're worried about. So, then once they crash, we realize, oh, so basically, this is 6 days, 7 nights, just with a lot of snow. Because if there's one thing we all fucking wanted, it's another 6 days, 7 nights. Wonderful. And her leg's fucked up. But hey, remember, he's a surgeon. Isn't that convenient? So, it turns into your average survival movie. I was afraid for a while I wouldn't have anything to say about this movie. It's going to be one of those ones where I just say like 2 minutes worth of shit at the beginning of the video, and then I say that's all I can say, because it has nothing to offer. But yeah, that's what it is for a lot of the time, and and you would think, I mean, you've got Idris Elba and you've got Kate Winslet. Obviously we know what Idris Elba's capable of as an actor. We definitely know what Kate Winslet's capable of as an actress. She can do amazing things, he can do amazing things. So why the fuck are these people so bland? And why the fuck can they not find any chemistry in all this open land? I don't know. But somehow they didn't. And the director had a hand in, like, some really acclaimed foreign movies, like, what was it, Paradise Now, and, like, Omar. These Oscar-nominated foreign movies. And it's, like, typically, this seems to be a relatively common thing. When you look at lesser directors, where it's, like, they do, look at The Snowman, for instance. Well, no, we had Tinker Tailor, forget that. But the idea of these foreign directors trying to do American movies, and a lot of the times it won't pay off, and we never hear from them again because they go back to their country and do what they were good at. And for some reason, it's like America put a curse on them or something. And I think this is one of those guys. And so it goes on, and we get the usual stuff where they do their best to give themselves. They're going to talk about their backstories or not talk about their backstories in an attempt to make themselves interesting. So the thing about it is, it's like, he wears a wedding ring. He's got a picture of his wife, but he never talks about his wife. And she's like, hey, why do you never, talk about your wife, even though you've got a ring and you got the picture and all that? And he doesn't answer her. And it's like, we know one of two things. They're getting divorced or she's dead. That's it. Either one of those is not going to make this more interesting. But they keep building up and building it up until we finally get the scene when he's, like, naked in her arms. He's like, she died. And it's like, this is my backstory, and this is, like, me coming out as a true character, and this is where we really connect now. It's like, number one, that's like an hour and 20 minutes into the movie. There's like 25 minutes left after they like, oh, by the way, this is important now. But weren't we really engaging you by just not fucking saying that right out? So, and that's what they do. They go on, and like I was just saying about the plane crash, it's like, these characters are so uninteresting. All you're worried about is if that damn dog's gonna live. And that's it. It's like, every time. It's like, we go out, like, there's like a lion or a cougar or something, and like the dog goes out there, and we like hear a scuffle, and it's like, oh, no, please God, oh, like, we want to be like Winslet, we want to cover our ears because he's whimpering, and then it's like the thing comes into the plane and it's walking up to Winslet, and then we're just watching normally. It's like, that thing can do whatever the fuck it wants to do with her, I'm not going to be invested in it. It's like, all dogs have to do is exist, and you don't want them to die. It's like, you look at Idris Elba and Kate Winslet, it's like, you should have all the care in the world, and you've got none whatsoever. And it's terrible. And so, and there's even, and there are attempts at humor, but it's like, those just end up awkward, and they all fall flat. And it's like, they're kind of like, they're awkward in the way, and they're awkward and not in the way they're intended to be. There's intended to be a little bit of awkwardness in those humorous moments, but that's not the kind of, that's not the way we're looking at it. And it's, and usually it just ends up being like the awkward moments end so abruptly, it's kind of like the writer was thinking, oh shit, I forgot to finish that scene. That's what it feels like. And once again, survival movie, they're on snowy mountains, you know, somebody's gonna slide down a cliff, somebody's gonna get their leg caught in something, somebody's gonna fall through thin ice. It's like, we just gotta wait for it to go through all the rounds we know it's gonna go through. And it's like, you forget how many survival type movies you've seen, or stranded in the wilderness movies you've seen, until you see one that goes through all the motions. And then you're like, wow, I forgot how many fucking times I've seen this movie, without actually having seen this movie. And like I said, mainly it's like it wants to be The Grey, where it's like, okay, you take The Grey, but you take out Liam Neeson, you take out the wolves, you keep Dermot Mulroney looking exactly like he does in The Grey. And then you take two great actors with no chemistry whatsoever, you put them in here. That's what this movie is pretty much. I was honestly a little, usually I don't care about this thing, and usually it's like, this is usually the way it turns out anyway, but it's like, I was honestly a little let down, because I was waiting for something kind of drastic to happen in this movie, and it's like, I'm waiting for something so bad to happen in this movie that it becomes infamous. And the thing about it was, I kept hearing about this sex scene. So it's like, okay. And it's like, the way it kept getting built up, as if it was a weird thing in the movie, I was thinking they just, like, fucking did it, like, on top of a mountain or something, like, in the snow. No, they find a damn cabin, and it's just a normal sex scene. And it's like, well, that's how the movie's even more boring. It's like, if we just had this crazy-ass scene where they did it in, like, a fucking igloo or something, it's like, then you have something to talk about. But no, it's just another bland thing added into the movie. That we've seen a billion times. There's a lot of weird-ass editing in it, too. It's like, it's just weird to put together, and doesn't go with the flow of the rest of the movie, either. And then there's obviously just a lot of moments where, I guess, to build up suspense, there's a lot of moments where it's like, it lingers on them being really still. And you just kind of keep asking yourself, wait, did they finally die? But then, yeah. So, I'm gonna go into spoiler territory a little bit here, if the movie matters to you at this point, this long after it's been out, and what we've already gone through. So, predictably, about 20 minutes of the movie left, they do get saved. And they're not as clever as Danny Boyle or Simon Beaufoy. They don't say, you know, well, we've reached the end of the movie, better just stop it now. No. So, they keep going for 20 minutes, and we gotta wait, and we do this whole thing, where it's like, will she marry Dermot Mulroney? Will he, you know, find meaning or whatever? Will they find their way back to each other or whatever? And it's like, and by that point, it just really doesn't matter at all. And it's like, you seriously, we cared about them so little, you could have ended the movie with them getting rescued, not told us anything about the aftermath. I don't think anybody would have cared. I really, really don't. But then it just keeps going, and then they throw in 20 minutes left after we've gotten this far. They find a way to throw in convoluted shit, like why they didn't contact each other. To where like she keeps calling him and he's not answering. She calls him, he's not answering. So finally they meet up in a diner, like it's fucking before sunset, and she's like, you know, you don't answer your phone, and he's like, I didn't answer my phone because I thought you were married, and it's like, I fucked you bareback in a cabin. But I thought you were engaged. But when I think you're married, I'm not going to answer my phone. So, but okay. So, and that's what we lead to. That's, yeah. So that's what's going on here. We've got a versus coming up in a day or two to kind of take us into the holiday season, and more coming out. I don't know anymore. Maybe 3 billboards will come around at some point. Maybe the Disaster Artist is supposed to go wide on the 8th. Hard to say. I'm going to one of the Fathom screenings of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I'm hoping there's a possibility I can catch a Lady Bird and or the Florida Project while I'm down there, because they're at the Art House Theater is like 5 minutes away from the theater that's playing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and I'd like to try to do that. It's really unpredictable at this point, so I guess we'll just see what happens. So until my house falls down on me, that's it.